Hi, I'm Dennis with BestMyTest.com. Welcome to our new series on the TOEFL speaking section. As you probably already know, the TOEFL changed. On August 1st, 2019, the entire TOEFL test changed, including the speaking section. So that's what this video series is about. We're going to help you, we're going to tell you what changed and how to best prepare for it. There used to be 6 questions on the test, and now there's only 4 questions on the speaking section. This video in particular, we're going to talk about speaking task 1. And if you've already been preparing for the TOEFL, that's good news. Why? Well, because the old speaking task 2 is now the new speaking task 1. It's the same question, just the first question now. The timing's the same, so that means you're going to have 15 seconds to prepare your answer and then 45 seconds to talk. Sound good? All right, let's get into it. All right, let's get into the important part. Here's what we're going to walk through in this video. We're going to talk about the 4 common question styles on the TOEFL speaking task 1. And then I'm going to give you 2 speaking templates for TOEFL speaking task 1. And then I'm going to show you 4 speaking sample answers. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up with a TOEFL rubric, like how the TOEFL task is graded. So first, let's look at the 4 common question styles on speaking task 1. All right, the first style is agree or disagree. And in this question, you're going to read a statement, and then you're going to have to give your opinion whether you agree or disagree with it. For example, you might read something like this. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Higher education means a better career. Use details and examples to support your explanation. All right, moving on. So the next question style is called preference. And it's similar to agree or disagree. You're going to say which of 2 choices you prefer. So for example, you might read something like this. Some people like to finish watching a TV series in a short period of time. Others like to watch 1 or 2 episodes per week or per month. Which do you prefer? Use details and examples to support your explanation. All right. So the next one is a little bit more complicated, and that's the 3 choices question style. And it's more complicated because instead of 2 things, you have 3 things. For example, you might read something like, which one would you like to choose for your final project? Giving a presentation, writing a paper, or creating a video. Last but not least, and this one's the most complex, and it's the most complex because you have to give 2 sides of an issue or a topic. And this is called advantages and disadvantages. So for this one, you might read a question such as, some students work while attending university. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages of having a part-time job at school. All right, so out of these 4 question styles, you're most likely going to see preference or the agree-disagree question style. So you really want to focus on these 2 and make sure you can nail them. But you can't neglect the other 2 because they show up as well. And they're a little bit more complicated, so you want to spend some time with them. Now, this is the new TOEFL, and these are the 4 question styles on the new TOEFL. But I've got a bit of bad news for you. And that is sometimes questions from the old TOEFL show up as well. So you might see 2 styles from the old TOEFL as well. And these are if, imaginary, and description. So if imaginary gives you a hypothetical situation and it wants you to explain what you would do or what you would choose. So you might read something like this. If you had a small amount of money, would you spend it right away or save it? Use details and examples to support your explanation. And the last one is description. So description or explanation question will ask you to describe a certain type of person, especially the good qualities of a person. These questions might ask you why something's beneficial or useful, important or significant. For example, you might read something like, should using cell phones be permitted while driving? Use details and examples to support your explanation. So I suggest you go through a few examples of these questions as well, because you might see them on the TOEFL exam. Okay, 6 questions. That's a lot to prepare, right? Yes, but no. If you think about it, all 6 of these questions, they're asking you for the same thing. What are they asking you? They're asking you to give your opinion about something and then support that opinion with details and examples. Right? It's all the same thing. So you can prepare for them in more or less the same way. Which brings me to our next point in the video, the speaking template. So you're going to start by giving your main point, your main idea, your opinion in 1 or 2 sentences. And then you're going to go on to the first supporting point, and you're going to talk about that for 2 to 3 sentences. And then you're going to talk about the second supporting point, also 2 to 3 sentences. And then, if you have time, you'll give 1 short concluding sentence. That's the speaking template. That's it. Okay, now let's look at some speaking templates. Okay, for our first template, we're going to use the following example question. Do you agree or disagree that daily homework is necessary for students? Use details and examples to support your explanation. So you'll start off and you'll say, I agree or I disagree with the idea that daily homework is good for students for 2 main reasons. And then you'll say, the first reason is that, and here you'll go into your first reason. The second reason is that, and now you give your second reason. And then you conclude by saying, overall, I think, and you sum up your opinion again. Of course, this is just one way to make your answer. You can use other phrases and sentences as long as the structure is the same. For example, you might say, to me, I definitely think that daily homework is necessary for students, and there are 2 reasons for this. First of all, and here I'm going to give my first point. On top of that, and here I give my second point. And then to sum up, I believe that, and here I'm going to restate my opinion. If you can follow this structure and speak for 45 seconds with fluency, you'll usually get a good score on this task. We'll talk about the grading criteria later on in this video. Okay, so before we get into an example answer, I want to give you one big piece of advice, and that's this. Do not talk like a robot. You don't want to sound like a robot. You want to sound like a natural, fluent speaker. And the number one way to do this is to speak with passion, to care about the topic that you're thinking about, that you're talking about. So when you have an opinion, it means that you care about something. So make a strong opinion and care about what you're saying, and that's going to help your fluency. So let's look at the question. Do you agree or disagree that daily homework is necessary for students? I'm going to give you a sample answer for that. Personally, I disagree that daily homework is necessary for students for 2 main reasons. The first reason is that people tend to resist what they're made to do. So if we give students homework every day, they're more likely to resist doing that. It would be much better if students actually studied subjects that they were interested in so that they actually wanted to be studying. The second reason is that there are plenty of scientific studies that show too much homework actually harms learning. If a teacher gives a student too much homework, they will learn less. So I think there's a balance between too much and too little homework, but daily homework is definitely too much. For these 2 reasons, I really disagree that daily homework is necessary for students. So that's my sample answer. Now, if you can't speak that fluently, that's okay. But what you want to do is you want to slow down and take more time on your main idea and the first 2 points. And then you can just skip the conclusion. The main idea, your opinion, and the first 2 points are much more important. Remember that. Okay, so now let's look at each of the 4 question styles in detail. We'll talk about some sentence patterns, and we'll go over some sample questions together. Let's get into it. Okay, let's get started with an agree or disagree question style. At the top there, we've got 2 sentence patterns. The first is I agree that, or I disagree that. And the second is, I agree with the idea that, or I disagree with the idea that. Now be careful here. You'll see this throughout this video series. I'll help you pay attention to your prepositions. That's one of the most common mistakes that ESL speakers make. So here, just make sure that you're saying, I agree that, and then you put the issue, the topic. Or you can say, I disagree with the idea that, and then you put the issue or the topic. Let's look at a couple examples. I definitely agree that higher education means a better career. Or you can say, I certainly agree with the idea that higher education equates to a better career. Now, as you can see, we added the words definitely and certainly, and that's totally fine to do. You can say definitely agree, certainly disagree, completely agree, absolutely disagree. You can use a lot of different adverbs there. All right, so let's look at a sample answer. First, I'm going to read the sample question, the example question, and then I'll go through a sample answer. Here we go. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Higher education means a better career. Use details and examples to support your explanation. I absolutely disagree with the idea that people with a higher education usually have a better career. First of all, there are plenty of people who have a bachelor's or master's degree but can't find a job. Or if they do, it's a minimum wage job. Meanwhile, there are people who go to a trade school with a clear path to a fulfilling career. They learn a useful, hands-on skill and build a life around it. Secondly, a lot of what people learn in college is not useful. It may be interesting, but that doesn't mean someone is going to pay you for that skill. My brother studied art history, and now he works in sales. To sum up, I think a higher education doesn't always equate to a better career. All right, next up is preference. And as you can see on the screen, we've got 4 sentence patterns for you. The first one, it says, I prefer to. And then it says V plus O. That means verb plus object. I prefer to swim. I prefer to attend. You add a verb there. The next sentence pattern, I would rather, same idea, add a verb or verb and an object, than, and then you add another second verb or object. We'll get to an example in a second. To me, the next one is, to me, X is certainly preferable to Y. Now here, X and Y, you're adding nouns. You can't put a verb here. You can't put an adjective here. You got to put a noun here. And the same with the last sentence pattern. I prefer X over Y, or I prefer X to Y. Okay, so let's look at some examples. To me, I prefer to watch all TV episodes at once. You see, right after to, we've got a verb there. The next one, to me, I would rather binge watch TV episodes than watch 1 or 2 episodes per week. Next one, to me, eating at home is certainly preferable to eating outside. Now, a minute ago I said you got to put a noun here, right? But eating at home, that's a gerund, and that is acting as a noun. It's a verb acting as a noun. The next one, last one. I prefer having a higher paying job with longer hours to having a lower paying job with shorter hours. Okay, so again, same idea there. The verb have is acting as a gerund, is acting as a noun there. All right, so let's look at a sample answer to the following example question. Do you prefer indoor activities or outdoor activities? Use details and examples to support your explanation. Personally, I prefer outdoor activities to indoor activities. For me, it's really important to get outside, to breathe some fresh air, to feel the sun on my skin. It's also really healthy for the mind and body. After even a short time outside, I feel very connected to the natural world. Secondly, in the modern world, we spend way too much time inside. We're inside reading a book, surfing the net, or scrolling on our phones. This is bad for our posture, our eyes, and our mental health. So, in a nutshell, indoor activities are more preferable to me because I value my health more than my comfort. All right, next question style. Let's look at 3 choices. And for this one, we've got 2 sentence patterns for you. The first one, you can start by saying, this is a good question, this is a great question, I love this question. Just a bit of an intro sentence to make your answer sound more natural. And then you can say, if I had to choose, I would choose, and then you start saying what you would choose. The next pattern, you'd say something like, well, all the options sound great, I would choose, and then there you add what you would choose. It's pretty straightforward. So let's look at 2 examples of this sentence pattern in action. First one, this is a good question. If I had to choose, I would choose to create a video for my final project. While all the options sound great, I would choose to give a presentation for my final project. And note, in that sentence pattern, the good and great, you can change that to any other adjective that is positive. You can change it to good, to great, to excellent, incredible, amazing. Any of those would work. All right, let's look at a sample answer for the following example question. Which one would you like to choose for your final project? Giving a presentation, writing a paper, or creating a video? This is a great question. If I had to choose, I would choose to write a paper for my final project. First of all, I think that writing a paper would give me plenty of time to gather my thoughts. If I gave a presentation, I might freeze up and not be able to give all the information that I had planned. Secondly, I really like to write, and I've taken several writing courses. So I believe that I would get the best score by writing a paper. Likewise, I've never created a video, so I wouldn't feel confident doing so in order to get my final grade. So because I want to gather my thoughts and give the best presentation possible, I would choose to write a paper for my final project. Style 4. This is advantages and disadvantages. And this is probably the most difficult of the 4 speaking styles. And that's because you got to show both sides of the issue or topic. As you can see on your screen, we've got 4 sentence patterns for you. The first one, there are certainly pros and cons of, there are certainly benefits and drawbacks of, there are certainly advantages and disadvantages to, there are certainly positive aspects and negative aspects associated with this topic. Now, as you can see, they're all kind of the same idea, but they're using different vocabulary, pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages, etc. Now again, where it says certainly there, you can change that to definitely, completely, totally, something like that, if that's more natural to you. All right, so those sentence patterns I just talked about, those are more that's for starting your answer, right? But once you get into it, you got to distinguish between the pro and the con, between the advantage and the disadvantage. And here's how you can do that. One advantage is that, and you talk about a pro, you talk about an advantage. And then if you're talking about a disadvantage, you can say on the flip side, or you could say, however, a major disadvantage is that. All right, so let's look at a couple of examples with these sentence patterns. There are certainly pros and cons of studying a foreign language at an early age. There are certainly advantages and disadvantages to working a part-time job while attending school. There are certainly benefits and drawbacks of taking a year off between finishing school and going to university. All right, now let's look at a full answer to the following example question. Some students take extra private lessons outside school hours. What are the advantages and disadvantages of private tuition? There are certainly benefits and drawbacks of private tuition. One advantage is that students may learn at their own pace. In a classroom, a teacher must adjust the pace of the curriculum to suit that of the average class pupil. If taught after class, a student may take their time with problems which can enhance their performance at school. On the flip side, a major disadvantage is that private lessons add substantially to a student's workload. Students already have a lot of homework and tests to prepare for at school. Private classes would almost certainly add to that, which would increase stress on a student. And that's not good. All right, so we covered a lot so far, and the most important bit is coming up in a second. But first, I just want to review real quick. Now, we covered the speaking styles on the test, we covered sample answers, we've given you some templates, some sentence patterns, and even some common mistakes to watch out for. Now, I know that might sound like a lot, but if you think about it, it's really just one thing that this task is testing you on, and that's giving your opinion and then supporting that. Focus on that. You can do it. A little bit every day, you can do it. All right, let's get into the most important part, the grading rubric. All right, so this is the rubrics table for the TOEFL independent speaking task. There's only one independent speaking task in the TOEFL now, so that's good news. This table that you're looking at comes directly from the ETS rubrics, and you can download it. There's a link here on the screen, and there's also a link in the description below. Now, I'm not going to go through the ETS description, you can read that on your own, but I am going to summarize it in a more digestible way for you. So there's 4 main categories, and the first one is general description. And what this means is you need to answer the question directly. You don't want to go off topic, and your answer needs to be easy to follow for the TOEFL rater. Make sure you answer the question. The next criteria is topic development. Here you need to make sure that your ideas are fully developed and connected. And that means using transition words. The TOEFL graders are specifically looking for transition words on how well you can connect your ideas using these words. Make sure each of the ideas is also having enough details and examples to support your opinion. All right, next up is delivery. Here you need to speak in a calm, clear, and natural manner. Remember what I said earlier about caring about what you're talking about. That's important. Your pronunciation and intonation should allow the TOEFL raters to easily understand everything that you say. Now, this one's very important, and this is often what makes a difference between a 26 and above or below a 26 on the TOEFL speaking section. So if you need to get higher than a 26 on this part of the test, make sure you spend extra time perfecting this part. All right, last but not least, we've got language use. And here your response needs to use a mix of sentence structures in a natural way. You also want to make sure that you're using correct vocabulary. Now, this is really important. I see a lot of students make this mistake. They want to impress the TOEFL rater, so they use vocabulary that's very advanced, but they don't use it correctly. And what does that mean? That means they lose marks. They don't gain marks. So the takeaway here is to use vocabulary appropriately. If you're in doubt, use a vocabulary word that's a lower level, but that you know you're using it appropriately. That's a much safer way to get a higher score on this part of the test. Congratulations! You've made it to the end of the video. Look, I know it's been long. We just want to do a really good job of preparing you for TOEFL Speaking Task 1. And if you look at this video, watch it again. There's a lot of information in there, everything you need to perform well on this task. As usual, if you guys want even more practice, you can go to www.bestmytest.com, and on the site we've got over 140 sample questions for this speaking task alone, plus the other speaking tasks. So check out the website. There's definitely more resources there for you to practice with. If you got a question, leave it in the comments, give the video a thumbs up, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video.